Welcome back. The material we're looking at today explores the transformative power of language, arguing that words literally shape our reality through things like neuroplasticity and energetic resonance.
It is an exceptionally strong premise. The expertise here is obvious. So to honor that, I think we need to jump right into the first point, which is about how the evidence is structured.
Okay, so a key theme here is establishing that words have measurable physical effect. The author does a great job making a scientific case for it, citing neuroplasticity.
How the brain rewires itself, yeah?
Exactly. And specific studies on physical health, even naming journals like psychosomatic medicine to show how positive affirmations can, lower blood pressure or reduce stress.
And that foundation of rigor is fantastic. It's the cornerstone of the whole argument, and we need to protect it. To maximize the material's credibility, the evidence that's used to support this words as spells idea, it needs to be rigorously aligned with the level of the scientific claims being made.
Okay.
But I wonder if we've really thought about the structural vulnerability we're creating by mixing these very robust, journal-cited claims with examples that are, highly contested.
You're talking about Dr. Masaru Emoto's water crystal experiment and maybe the generalized plant studies?
Exactly.
I mean, they're visually so powerful. They're great examples of energy affecting matter. So what's the real danger of putting them next to the psychosomatic medicine research?
The danger is all about the audience. This piece is clearly for a discerning reader, someone who appreciates complexity. For them, that seamless juxtaposition, it just weakens the logical integrity. You build all this authority citing verifiable science on blood pressure and neural pathways, and then you immediately pivot to examples that, a lot of the mainstream scientific community just sees as anecdotal.
So the reader who trusts the neuroscience might hit the water crystals and then start questioning the whole thing.
Precisely. It's like building a skyscraper on a foundation that suddenly dips into quicksand. The trust you've built is burned, even if the example serves a beautiful thematic purpose.
I see. That makes sense.
So the suggestion here is to strengthen that logical foundation. You could either clearly segment the evidence that lacks consensus, or if those examples are absolutely crucial for the theme, and I think they are, you have to address their methodological limits directly.
So you're managing the reader's expectation. You're drawing a clear line between metaphor and empirical fact.
Exactly that. Let's talk about how to do it.
Okay, some concrete ways to handle that tricky evidence.
Well, to maintain that scientific rigor, one way is to frame the Emoto water crystal reference purely as a compelling metaphor for energetic impact.
Just an illustration.
Right. Call it a useful conceptual framework. That way, you're explicitly distancing it from the claims about measurable effects on the human body. It can still serve its purpose for illustrating frequency and vibration, just not a strictly scientific one.
That's smart. You get to keep the poetry of it without losing credibility.
And then, to deepen the claims you do want to keep scientific, instead of just general mentions of neuroplasticity, you could provide a more specific mechanism.
What do you mean?
Like explore how intentional language might actually modulate the nervous system. Maybe you could tie certain word choices to activation in the prefrontal cortex, or something. You just need to match the rigor implied by citing psychosomatic medicine. The audience can handle that level of specificity.
So you either double down on the rigor, or you label it as a metaphor. That's a very clear path. Now, I did appreciate that the material went beyond just self-help. It tackled the broader societal stuff.
Absolutely. And that tension is where the piece really finds its unique angle.
Right. It starts with the individual telling the listener to choose words that don't just speak but create, to bring health, harmony, and happiness.
The internal work.
But then it pivots hard to this macro-level analysis of media, of governments, and how they shape public perception. The examples are great, like labeling a protest as a riot, or deconstructing authority into author and idiot.
That thematic tension is brilliant. It's this fascinating conflict between personal empowerment and a critique of societal control. But, and this is our second major point, the transition between those two different scales needs a much sharper narrative focus to feel unified.
So you're saying the listener has to jump too quickly from using words for their own happiness to suddenly breaking free from these big societal spells? What's the effect of that jump?
It creates a kind of narrative whiplash. There isn't a clear bridge between personal manifestation and, structural linguistic manipulation. So you risk alienating parts of your audience.
The self-help crowd might find the societal critique too political, and the social critics might find the personal advice too simplistic.
That's the risk. And my concern is that by focusing so much on government language, the tone might shift into something more sociological, which maybe isn't the core intent. How do we keep this focused on linguistic mastery and personal choice?
That's the question.
I think the way to do it is to make sure the external critique serves as the ultimate compelling why for immediate internal action. The suggestion is to build a dedicated, framed transitional section that explicitly links the two.
So understanding external manipulation becomes the motivation for mastering your internal language.
Exactly. The societal spell isn't just some interesting analysis. It's the reason you need to cleanse your own language right now. It shows the mechanism is the same on both scales.
Okay, so let's get concrete. How do you weave those threads together?
Well, as a transitional bridge, before you even bring up media framing, you can use those structural word deconstructions that are already in the material.
The author uses examples like contract or mortgage. I think it was deconstructed to mean death pledge.
Perfect. Start right there. Show how the seemingly neutral language of finance is actually loaded with these inherent limitations. That proves external language isn't just theory. It affects the listener's wallet right now.
It makes it personal.
It makes the societal spell something that's not just on the news, but in the very words they use to define their relationship to debt or work. That makes the transition logical, not jarring.
So you ground the societal critique in these immediate, actionable terms. It shows the reader they're already under a spell and they need the antidote.
And then to close that loop, you reframe the critique. After you discuss media wordplay, you pivot right back to an internal audit. The question shouldn't just be what beliefs have been written for you, but what external labels are you unconsciously using to define your internal limits?
That's a sharp, elegant way to manage that tension. Okay, let's move to the practical application. The material lands with a strong call to action. Replacing I cannot with I'm learning, starting with affirmations like I am growing, and that 24-hour language cleanse. These are great fundamentals.
They are. They're sound, foundational principles. But this brings us to our third critique. While the action steps are excellent at a high level, the how-to section could be bolstered with more structured, scalable methods to really increase the takeaway value.
I think I know where you're going with this. The theoretical buildup is huge. The piece builds this incredibly powerful case, talking about the subtle energy and the resonance of words.
Yes, it likens language to tuning a musical instrument.
That vibrates with an energy.
And that's the sophisticated hook. The problem is the actionable steps that follow, while sound, feel a little basic. They don't fully leverage those profound concepts of tuning or frequency that were established earlier.
Right. The implementation section feels disproportionately light compared to the theory.
Exactly. It's like we've introduced the listener to the idea of language as a vibrational tool, but then we've only told them to check the oil. We haven't taught them how to compose the symphony. The sophistication of the theory demands a similarly sophisticated practice.
Okay, I'm with you.
So the suggestion is to introduce a more formal, systemic framework for this. Move beyond simple word substitution and actually integrate the concept of resonance and tuning into a daily routine.
So how do you translate something as abstract as vibrational resonance into a concrete daily habit? It needs to be something the average listener can actually track.
We give them a vocabulary audit that's tied directly to that frequency concept. So a couple of concrete examples. First, you could structure the resonance.
What does that mean?
Suggests categorizing days' language, define dissonant words, the limiting negative ones, then neutral words, just functional, descriptive things like I bought milk. And finally, resonant words, the ones that are goal-aligned, attracting, that express gratitude.
So the daily challenge becomes tracking and increasing the proportion of resonant language you use. You're turning it into a measurable practice. You're giving them a metric for their own energetic tuning.
Precisely. And second, we can build on the existing suggestion about visualization. Right now, it just recommends it. We should require the listener to not just picture their ideal life, but to create specific resonant language scripts tied to key areas of their life.
Can you elaborate on what a script would look like?
So instead of a general affirmation, it would be highly intentional. Maybe 3 resonant phrases for health, 3 for your career, 3 for relationships. And then you practice speaking them out loud, consciously focusing on that idea of tuning your energy to align with that stated frequency.
It fully integrates the concept of words as a vibrational instrument.
Yes. It shifts the practice from a passive intention to an active, systematic, energetic alignment.
So we're asking the listener to shift from affirmation as intention to language as a measured frequency. We're giving them a concrete system that really honors the depth of the material.
It ensures the powerful theory doesn't just become intellectual fluff. It becomes a blueprint for change.
This has been incredibly insightful. Let's do a quick recap of the main opportunities here.
First, enhancing the logical rigor of the evidence by clearly segmenting the hard science from the powerful metaphors and getting more specific where scientific claims are made.
Second, clarifying that narrative link between personal power and the societal critique by creating a dedicated transitional bridge, using the author's own word deconstructions to connect the two.
And finally, deepening the practical action steps by incorporating that high-level concept of linguistic resonance into a structured, scalable framework, moving beyond simple substitution to a measurable practice of vibrational tuning.
The material is exceptionally strong. It builds a really solid theoretical case. To ensure the message achieves its maximum impact, the actionable steps are: segment the evidence, build that bridge between the external and internal, and create a formal resonance framework for daily practice.
We genuinely believe in this work. We invite you to implement these structural and philosophical revisions, and please submit your material back to us for a follow-up critique once you feel you've integrated these opportunities.